Greetings, YouTube. This is the Truth Bearer 1 speaking. This is a video response to the video Black Feminism is Based in Deception, Misperception, and False Propaganda by Real Man Allen 73. And I just wanted to say I agree with pretty much everything you said in the video. And I thought it was funny how you mentioned the movies Birth of a Nation and The Color Purple. I thought it was funny, first of all, because I actually wrote a paper on the film Birth of a Nation. A few years ago, I took a course on the art of film. I believe it was called Intro to the Art of Film. And for our last paper, we had a choice of 1 out of 3 topic discussions. And the choice that I picked read something along the lines of choose a film that had a huge influence on the film industry and or society as a whole, and discuss how. It read something like that. And the film that I chose was Birth of a Nation, being that it had a major impact on both the film industry and society. As far as the film industry is concerned, Birth of a Nation was a groundbreaking achievement. It was the first full-length feature film in cinema. I think lasting more than 3 hours. Because prior to that, movies were short films, lasting about 5, 10, or 15 minutes. And so this was the first full-length feature film in Hollywood, in the film industry. And technically speaking, Birth of a Nation was a masterpiece. It was truly a work of art from a filmatic perspective. This film was a real big deal when it was released back in 1915. It wasn't just a movie, it was an event. And because the movie was so long, the tickets for Birth of a Nation sold at much higher prices. So it was kind of like going to see a 3D movie back then. Think of it as the Avatar of its time. It was the most expensive film to date, and it became the highest grossing film of the time. Now, as for the actual content, the storyline of the movie was a bunch of racist propaganda. The movie is split into 2 parts. The first part is about the Civil War, and the second part is about Reconstruction. And this is pretty much the racist half of the movie, particularly anti-black male. All black men in the film, who are all played by white men in blackface, by the way, are portrayed as lazy, violent, sex-driven beasts who are obsessed with white women. And the way black men are portrayed in the film, it's not even human. Black men are portrayed as these monstrous creatures who happen to look like people, who happen to look human. And the hero of the film is the Ku Klux Klan. In the movie, the KKK is seen as a group of brave, noble, courageous white men who rise up to protect white women and therefore white society from the evil black men creatures. Now, this movie was believed to be the truth by many white Southerners because this was their perception of the Reconstruction era. But facts will tell us that this movie was a bunch of bullshit. But the perception by white Southerners was that this movie was true, even though we all know for a fact that's not the case. Now, remember I said Birth of a Nation had an impact on society too, and it had a huge impact on American race relations. Being as big as the film was, you know a lot of people saw it back then. Birth of a Nation was linked to the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan. See, prior to Birth of a Nation, the KKK had pretty much died out of existence at the time. Then this movie came along and breathed new life into the group. In fact, Birth of a Nation was specifically used by the KKK as a recruitment tool, and enrollment into the KKK had skyrocketed. There were also reports of whites killing blacks after viewing this movie. Also, another big point, Birth of a Nation was shown at the White House when it originally aired. In fact, it was the first motion picture aired inside the White House. The president at the time, Woodrow Wilson, he had a private screening with the director. I think the director or the writer of the movie, for his family. And President Wilson was credited as saying that the film was, quote, like writing history with lightning, and my only regret is that it is all so terribly true, end quote. Later on, Wilson had denied he said this, and personally I don't believe that, because before Wilson was president of the United States, he was the president of Princeton University, and while he was president, he openly discouraged blacks from applying to the school. So it wouldn't exactly be out of his character to say something like that. So this movie went as far as being endorsed by the President of the United States. Now, even in 1915, there were people who knew this film's message was blatantly racist. The NAACP protested the movie, and this film was even banned from theaters in some parts of the country. So that's just to show you that not everyone fell for the okie doke, even though a lot of people did. But today, it's just common knowledge that Birth of a Nation is an extremely racist movie, even though film experts still appreciate the movie for its cinematic contributions. But most people will condemn the movie's message, well, publicly anyway. And that might be due more out of political correctness than an honest rebuke of the movie's racism. Point is, people nowadays generally acknowledge that Birth of a Nation. They acknowledge Birth of a Nation as racist propaganda that was passed off as truth. People openly acknowledge that the movie demonizes black men, whether or not they personally agree with the image, and a lot of them do agree with the image. Let's get that straight. But the point is, they know better than to say it out loud because it's not socially acceptable. Now, let's talk about The Color Purple. I'm not going to go through the plot because I'm pretty sure most black people have seen this movie already. The Color Purple film came out in 1985, I believe. The film was based on a novel written by a black feminist, Alice Walker. By the way, Birth of a Nation was also a novel before it was a movie, by the name of The Klansman. and it was written by a white supremacist, of course. Anyway, the reason I said it was funny you mentioned these two films is because both movies actually have very similar portrayals of black men. Think about it. Birth of a Nation portrayed black men as violent, savage, sexually aggressive predators. The Color Purple portrayed black men as violent, savage, sexually aggressive predators. The only difference is this. Birth of a Nation portrayed black men as a threat to white women, whereas The Color Purple portrayed black men as a threat to black women. And of course, the depiction of black men in The Color Purple was nowhere near as cartoonish as the depiction in Birth of a Nation. But other than that, the portrayals of black men are pretty much the same. I made this comparison on a black message board before, and not surprisingly, a lot of black women disagreed. They refused to believe that it's the same thing. See, black women insist that the film is just about telling the black woman's side of the story, giving the black woman's perception. Well, that's also white people's reasons for Birth of a Nation. Many white people, especially in the South, believe that their perception of black men in the movie was accurate, the truth. Not at all different from how black women feel about the portrayal of black men in The Color Purple, and pretty much every Black Men Ain't Shit movie that came out afterwards. It's always the same justification. These are black women's stories. Yeah, and Birth of a Nation was white people's story. So black women need to ask themselves a question. Why is your perception of black men pretty much the same as racist white people's perception of black men? Why is it that black feminism's perspective on black men is basically identical to white supremacy's perspective on black men? And the truth is this. Black feminists and white supremacists actually share a mutual hatred for black men. See, while The Color Purple didn't have as big an impact as Birth of a Nation, it is still praised as a cinematic masterpiece. Nothing wrong with that. But here's the catch. Remember, society has learned to condemn Birth of a Nation's racist portrayal of black men. The same is not true for The Color Purple's depiction of black men. People find it easier to denounce Birth of a Nation because it was written by white men and the racism is obvious. On the other hand, people are more comfortable with the image of black men in The Color Purple because it was written by a black woman. Therefore, they naturally believe it can't be racist and must be true. So, in a way, The Color Purple can be seen as potentially more detrimental to black men's image because it goes largely unchallenged. The Color Purple, both the book and movie, has significantly contributed to the Black Men Ain't Shit genre. Because that is socially acceptable. The Color Purple is now a Broadway play. Matter of fact, I think it's a musical. That is how acceptable this portrayal of black men is. It's musical material. Can you imagine Birth of a Nation being a Broadway play today? Probably not. Because the racism is too obvious, the racist portrayal of black men is too blatant, and it will probably be widely protested. But white supremacists have found a better way to spread their hatred of black men. A way that is socially acceptable. A way that is politically correct. A way that would not go questioned or challenged. And that method is black feminism. This has been a public service announcement by the Truth Bearer 1. Peace out.